This content is brought to you by Uphold, which is a great platform that makes it easy and simple for you to buy, hold, and sell and earn crypto. You can trade from anything to anything. For example, you could trade between cryptocurrencies and precious metals. It's an amazing platform that I've been using for years. And in fact, I still use to this day because they're one, a great exchange, they're reputable, and they're one of the only exchanges that still lists XRP. Many of the other exchanges have delisted XRP due to the SEC lawsuit, but you can still get XRP on Uphold. So I've interviewed the CEO, the founder, and many other representatives from Uphold over the years, and I'm a fan of this platform. And once again, there's some great features like trading between different assets very easily. You don't have to convert to a currency and so forth. They're used by 10 plus million users. They have over 200 cryptocurrencies and they have a very easy to use app. The interface is really nice. So I can certainly vouch for this platform. Once again, I've been a user for years. So if you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Lisa Braganca, who's a former SEC branch chief and founder of Braganca Law, which can be found, or you can get more details at secdefenseattorney.com. Lisa, great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks,
Lisa,
Tony.
Lisa, I have so many questions for you, about what's happening with crypto regulations and the SEC, but I would love to get to know you a bit better. Tell us about your background, where you're from, and where did you grow up?
Well, as it turns out, I grew up in New Jersey, but now I live in the Chicago suburbs, and came here to Chicagoland for college, and met my husband, stayed. So I do identify as a Chicago person, Midwestern now. I feel like that's, formed my who I am. And I kept going to the University of Chicago, went there for college, and then it's almost like I have a bungee cord to the school. I went back for business school, then I went back for law school, even sent a kid there to the elementary school associated with it. But now I apparently I'm out of school that I can go to, and so now I have to actually just stay out in the world of work. So yeah, it's a shame because I love school, but I got into a little bit of finance when I was in business school. Didn't really get into securities at all in law school. Left, wanted to be a litigator,
Hmm.
wanted to solve the problems of the world through litigation. Did a bunch of different kinds of litigation and finally went to work for the Securities and Exchange Commission. And it was a great fit. It was really interesting. You can delve deep into incredibly complex issues and basically spent a lot of time learning how to lie through accounting, which I thought was great fun. I think I am a CPA wannabe. There aren't
Hmm.
many of us out there, but I'm one.
Um,
So
what years were you there at the SEC, and were there any significant items that you worked on that you can call out?
sure. It was a long time ago. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. You're all going to know how old I am. But I was there around 2000. Like the
Hmm.
big thing that was happening when I was there was Y2K, which
Yeah.
everyone's going to laugh at now because we really did think that the entire
Was
world might come crashing down because of, the, us not having the 20 part of the year. I mean,
yeah.
but who knows? Maybe all the monitoring that we did and forcing all these broker dealers and other participants to fix their systems, maybe that kept us from a disaster. Maybe
Sure.
not. Maybe it was just craziness, but that's the time frame that I was in, right back with Arthur Levitt and Harvey Pitt. So those are my years. It was a while ago, but I've been active with SEC cases ever since. I do a mix of investor protection work, whistleblower representation and SEC defense and regular old litigation. So I like keeping my hand in all of those things. It helps me to kind of step back and always look at what the SEC is doing and try to think about it, rationally, not always as we're locking horns.
Sure. I always ask every one of my guests what their first encounter with crypto was and what was their aha moment. And everybody usually has a different story. And what was yours?
Well, I had two that I want to mention. The first was discovering. I mean, my husband worked until recently for the federal government, so he's
Mm.
got all these reporting requirements, and discovering that our son had invested in Bitcoin and didn't tell us. That was kind of a big aha moment. It was like,
Oh yeah.
whoa, we gotta like report that. Okay, that was before we knew what Bitcoin was, and it was not a big deal once we knew it. But that was the first. Then, what really did it for me was I got a call one day from somebody who was under investigation by the SEC,
Mm.
and and it was somebody in the crypto community, and I had been looking into it and kind of talking about it a little bit because it was really interesting. But this was my drinking from a fire hose experience because these guys they had their own exchange,
Mm.
and they were under investigation. They had to produce document. I mean, I had to learn everything
Right.
about so many different coins. And at the same time, they really wanted to be able to just get into compliance. And I learned how impossible that was. There
Mm.
just wasn't any way for them to be able to do that in a timely manner. So ultimately, we resolved the investigation and they ended up closing everything down,
Mm.
and we got a great result for them. But it's still really frustrating,
Sure.
when they wanted a path to compliance and there just wasn't anything out there.
Wow. Yeah, talk about drinking from the fire hose. I mean, with an exchange with so many different tokens and moving parts, and it was all still new, it sounds like. So that must have been
Well, yes, and it was 2017, very end of 2017. And, one of the things in this community, we have lots and lots of smart people. And um, people who read the Dow report, read other cases, SEC comments, cases, everything that's out there, and then come to a conclusion and say, okay, this is how we're going to do things. This is not a good practice.
Mm.
That kind of action will lead you to having to call me at some point to represent you, or someone just like me to represent you in an SEC investigation. Because what the SEC says, like in the Dow report, they say, oh, this is limited to these facts and circumstances. Don't believe that. That's not really true. Okay. You can't just
Wow.
distinguish that and the Dow report and then say, but what I'm doing is fine. No, 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 no.
Mm.
So you really do need to get advice. And that's advice from a US securities lawyer. And I know that can be really hard to find. It's super expensive, and I don't do that, but I want to like give a shout out to all the people who do, because there's a lot of liability that goes with that. And so you got to pay a lot for, professional liability insurance. They pay even more for that kind of insurance than I do, much more. And that's why people don't dabble in it, and if they do it, they do a lot of it, and they're subject to getting sued down the road by all the investors. So anyway, this is the reason that it's tough to just find somebody and say, well, but I only need a letter, and why can't somebody do that for me for, $500? Well, it's because it's not just $500. It's $500 plus the potential of being sued, by 1,000 people down the road and investigated and all these various things. So that's not work that I do specifically, but I do, want to help people to understand that it's important. And hiring, I love the people of Ukraine, but hiring a Ukrainian lawyer to give you advice on whether your crypto token is a security or not, not a good idea.
For sure.
Seen
Um,
those.
as the crypto market has grown and we've seen tremendous growth over the years, has the number of crypto clients that you provide service to, has that grown as well? I'm sure you're maybe more busier than ever. I don't know if you can tell us a bit about
You
that.
know, it stays fairly steady, mostly
Mhm.
because I get a lot of calls from people who have put money into crypto and have, for one reason or another, run into trouble.
Mm.
And the sad part is I can't help them. The vast majority of them I can't help. And here's why. You know, sometimes it's that they lost the money a long time ago and they didn't do certain things that would really be required to show that, let's say, somebody at Coinbase or somebody at Binance, misused their account and stole
Mm.
their coins. Um, because of course, Coinbase and Binance are going to say, well, yes, your coins disappeared, but it's not us. We didn't do it.
Mm.
And if you don't have an image copy of your computer so that you can show exactly how that different address got dropped in, so your the contents of your wallet got hijacked, um, you can't really prove it then.
Wow.
So it's a real problem. So that's kind of the number one thing is you got to deal with this right up front, and you can't reach out to them and then wait, for their response, which will take a long time, and then kind of it just snowballs. By the time people come to me 6 months later and say I couldn't resolve it with Coinbase, like I can't really help you out. So if it's a big dollar amount, that's something to consider right away. It's that,
Wow.
if you put in an address, if you call up Coinbase and you say, look, I just put in an address and and everything's gone. I tried to
Mm.
transfer it to Kraken. Kraken says they never got it. It went someplace else. Okay, but you have to, you need evidence
Right.
to prove that it wasn't you who put in the wrong address and it wasn't some person, we know there's all kinds of viruses on our computers, and they wake up and they're thrilled when they see those addresses show up. They're like, oh great, hijack, there it goes. So that's a problem. Then there's another problem of just the amounts.
Mm.
It's expensive. It's hard enough. I represent lots of investors who've lost money, and when I can bring an arbitration in, FINRA arbitration, let's say, or if I can bring a small case
Mm.
in a local court, that's great. Then I can get some kind of relief. But when you're talking about these crypto exchanges, you've got arbitration provisions that say you have to do it in San Francisco or someplace
Oh
else.
yeah.
So that can sometimes be an obstacle. But the biggest obstacle is you just went and hopped on and did a transaction.
Mm.
Well, decentralized means you can't sue Mr. Bitcoin. You can't sue Mr. Ethereum, right? There's nobody to go up to go after.
Right.
And that means your money's gone.
Mm.
So it can be really disruptive. I mean, I love the technology. I love the great things that are happening, but right now it's the Wild West.
Sure. Yeah, there's just so many infrastructure items that are needed to scale this for mass adoption. To your point, you're off by a character or a capitalization or lowercase, and it just screws up everything. And sometimes, to your point, transactions get lost even between centralized exchanges, and it's like, what do you do? Um,
Right.
yeah,
And
you
and
can.
I look, I hate banks. I complain about banks all the time. I think they're, abusive and all that. But when something goes haywire with a bank transaction, if you're doing something via your account, you actually have, there is a Mr. JP Morgan Chase, that you can
Sure.
call up, and you've got, so there's great things about decentralization, but there's also like some good stuff about having things be centralized too. So we're all figuring that out.
For sure. Yeah. There's still a lot to your point that needs to be figured out. And I know there's bills, there's debates happening right now with DeFi versus CeFi and so forth. Um, let's talk about the SEC. Obviously, you were there at some point. A lot has changed in markets and technology and so forth. Right now, a lot of people are not happy with the SEC, and I want to make sure I preface my questions and my comments. I believe the SEC has a job to do, protect investors, stop scams. There are scams in the crypto market. We agree on that. However, folks feel that the SEC are targeting legit companies and almost hurting innovation, and they're scratching their heads like, what's happening? So I would love to get your take on what do you see with the SEC right now? Could you give them a grade? And what are they doing right and what are they doing wrong?
Yeah, this is a really tough situation for the SEC and for the community. I'm not thrilled with how the SEC has approached this. The SEC's initial approach was, we have the Howey test, everything's a security other than Bitcoin and Ethereum. Ethereum even started off as a security, but it's not anymore. So that's regulation through enforcement.
Hmm.
And that's a problem. That means that, and that's something the SEC does regularly. I mean, but here's the difference. The SEC regulates a very highly regulated area. The
Hmm.
securities markets have, if you pull out the books on securities regulations, they're super thick, back
Yeah.
when we used to look at books. Now, it's all online. But there are lots of specific, very detailed regulations and laws that deal with all kinds of specific parts of the securities industry, the exchanges themselves and the products themselves. Crypto didn't fit in anywhere
Hmm.
specific, and doesn't have those specific kinds of regulations yet that deal with its own idiosyncrasies. But the SEC looks at, this, it's not even a rule or regulation or a law, it's the Howey test from a case. It
Right.
says, here's how we know if something's a security. And we're going to apply this test. And I don't have a huge objection to the Howey test. What we do need, though, is for the SEC to look at the specifics of what is going on with a blockchain and with tokens and be more nuanced. Right now, everything is, they're just hitting it with a hammer.
Yeah.
And that is a real problem in the industry, and it is forcing people offshore. It is having an effect on how innovative people in the US can be as opposed to offshore. And I hate to hear people say, well, you know what? I guess I'm going to have to like go move to the British Virgin Islands or,
Right.
move to Gibraltar or someplace that's a little more crypto friendly. So but they are trying to catch up. This has all happened ridiculously fast as compared to, the way these things usually kind of chunk along. I mean, if you look at index funds, for example, they didn't exist back before, I think, the 1970s. There wasn't a S&P 500 index, and it took a while of John Bogle and various people, pushing that and explaining it and getting that to a point where it was approved by the SEC, and now they're huge, big things in the marketplace. That the pace of crypto just it's so much faster than that. And it's being done by people who are outside of the securities industry. And so there's a real clash there in terms
Sure.
of, move fast, break things versus, hey, we've been doing this for years, and we need to think about this before we do anything.
Sure. And I absolutely understand, the situation they're in. It's tough, to your point. Like there's so many coins, things are moving very fast. But why take a stance of enforcement? Why not put out some clear guidelines? And maybe I understand Congress makes the laws, but why can't the SEC adopt what, for example, Commissioner Hester Peirce has been saying, the sandbox, like work with the projects versus going after them with a hammer, right? Like whack-a-mole or something. So it's like the common sense approach is missing. It's just knee-jerk reactions happening, it seems like. And on your point of the Howey test, do you feel we need a updated Howey test for digital assets, given that they're on decentralized networks, globally distributed, token holders could be in many countries, and how can the US just, alone say this is a security, but in 10 other countries it's a virtual currency?
Right. This is the real problem. And I think, Commissioner Peirce has been doing some good work and really thinking about this. I might not agree with her on everything, but on
Sure.
this, I definitely see where she's coming from, and she's listening.
Mhm.
And that's really important. Um, I think part of the problem is the government regulation overall. It's, the SEC started off before, 2017 when they came out with the Dow report. They were mostly lawyers
Mm.
and not knowledgeable about crypto or even the physical, not physical because it's all, electronics, but the actual operations of the markets. I mean, they're super complex. And it's overwhelming. I mean, what the SEC is trying to regulate is overwhelming. And then they got whacked upside the head with crypto. I mean, they were having enough trouble trying to keep up,
Sure.
with just high frequency trading and new products coming out, that were at least under the umbrella of the industry that they clearly had oversight for. And then bam, crypto comes along and it's just, wildly different. So to some extent, what they did was an overreaction.
Mm.
And I think they tried with the Dow report. From their perspective, they put the Dow report out there and they said, okay, we've told everybody what's going on. We told everybody that we're going to apply the Howey test. We told everybody, how it is that this particular token is a security, and we did it without whacking, Dow. Okay.
Mm.
Um, since then, they've been frustrated when they see that there hasn't been widespread adoption of, and an embrace of the Dow report and the Howey test. And so there's still a real friction there because they think that they have been clear. And the industry says, you've been as clear as mud.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to us. And so how do you bridge that chasm between the two?
Sure.
And that's going to keep resulting in litigation over and over again. Now, when you get to the choice of their litigation, I think that is somewhat problematic. I mean, they have limited resources.
Mm.
So they look for cases to send a message. And that can be somewhat harsh rather than having a regulation. Choosing to bring a case and make an example out of someone
Mm.
is, it's sort of like, when mom would catch four kids, all doing something, or maybe catches two of them and they're like, wait a minute, But the other two got a lot more candy out of the Halloween basket than I did. It's like, yeah, but I caught you, so that's it. You're getting grounded for a month. That's kind of their approach, and they expect everybody else to, all the other ones to watch what they did and to absorb it and to move ahead, internalizing what they did.
So this sounds like, if we go to the root of it, kind of like a government failure issue versus, okay, it's just the SEC. It's just lack of resources, lack of education, or I don't know, or lack of working with the industry closely. I don't know, but it seems like there's a layer to it that's about that.
Well, one of the things too that crypto, and I think the crypto community is kind of getting the hang of this now, is the SEC has been very tightly connected to the securities industry.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are people from JP Morgan Chase and UBS and Citibank in their offices all the time. There are trade associations that are in the SEC's offices all the time, telling the SEC what they want, explaining to the SEC what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So they are very closely aligned. And that's not to say the SEC doesn't bring enforcement actions against them, but
Yeah.
there's a real presence there.
Yeah.
That did not happen with crypto because of its genesis. It kind of bubbled up from the ground. It was a grassroots sort of thing. And that meant that you had lots of people in the industry, in the securities industry, like Jamie Dimon, who bashed crypto before he adopted it.
Yeah.
And so, and you have a bunch of lawyers, and I'm a lawyer, I will admit, we tend to be very backward looking.
Mm.
We're not in the vanguard in terms of innovation and all that, because we're always looking at precedent and we want to say, well, how does this fit in with the past? And if you're on the business end, like from my business school days, business school people are like, who cares what the old law is? I care about doing something new, and,
Mm.
innovating. And so there's this clash there too. And I
Yeah.
think it's less government failure or than just a you've seen, we have all seen, the CFTC did a much better job
Yeah.
of connecting with the industry,
Right.
of with the crypto folks, of creating a sandbox, of listening, and there just was a whole different feeling. And so it can be done. It's just that the securities industry, is old white shoe kind of, big guys. It's Wall Street. And the crypto community is not Wall Street.
Yeah.
So they were not speaking the same language and there wasn't any commonality there. And so it's taking a while. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of that is happening via litigation because that's where the action is. That's what's going on.
For sure. And I think folks are also, a bit confused, and they're also, it leads to conspiracy. It leads to all types of thoughts, especially with social media. The way, for example, certain lawsuits are handled, specifically like the Ripple lawsuit. Former SEC chair Jay Clayton, on his last days, filed a lawsuit, and he's out the door. And it's like, what's going on? Like, that just seems shady. And then there were
And that was a bad practice. I do agree that I don't think it made sense. It was bad optics, and it undermines faith in the system when you do those kinds of things. Yeah, there was no reason that needed to be done that day. Could have waited to be approved by the next chairman.
For sure. So, what are your thoughts on that lawsuit? There's a lot of amicus briefs that are coming in on behalf of Ripple just for yesterday. Do you foresee Ripple having a victory here, and what potential outcome you may see?
This is the case to watch. This is really exciting stuff. I wish was going to come out because boy, I'd be able to trade on that basis and it wouldn't be insider trading, be just really smart trading. But I don't. It is so unpredictable. I mean, first of all, the usual thing, for SEC cases is the SEC files a case, and no matter what, the SEC wins. I mean, let's face it. If you look at their history, they win. They have vast resources that they can marshal to be able to crush their opponents. Here, they've gone up against someone who is marshaling a great deal of resources via the amicus briefs and just on their own. They have the A team of litigators. And that's definitely evening things out. And so it's not clear that the SEC is going to prevail in this case. And that makes it very exciting for those of us in this area, because usually they just kind of flatten their opponents. I mean, the best way to do it is they even with crypto cases, they drop in, bring a temporary restraining order, and like you can't even access your money, an asset freeze. You can't defend yourself because everything's frozen. So that's a very typical move for the SEC. Ripple, they didn't do that. So they brought this case, and now it is real. Every issue is really being briefed, and the judge is going to have to, is going to have a great discussion of the issues and all of it laid out, and all of us are getting that now. We get the benefit of being able to read all of that too and see it. And so I think that's going to feed into a regulatory agenda. And I have to give Gary Gensler credit. I mean, he is trying to push a whole lot of regulation. And that's a good thing, but it's exhausting the staff because it's a lot of work. He's a real hard taskmaster. People say that from his CFTC days. I don't know him personally, but all I can say is he's got a reputation. Not a surprise for a former Goldman Sachs guy, but he's also a business guy. And so he looks at things from that perspective, and he knows crypto. So it is a little surprising to see them continuing to hammer along. But part of the problem here is once a case is brought, and you're right, Chairman Clayton got that filed right before he left. As an institution, the SEC does not want to be seen as dropping a case when a new chairman comes in. Now, that may have been the better practice, and it probably was a better practice for that case never to have been filed. But given that it was filed, Gary Gensler can't be backing off of it, be seen to, just reverse it. It's a mess. So it's a mess.
Yeah, it just seems bad optics. And you also layer in that some whistleblower organizations have done FOIA requests, and it seems that there's ethics violations with Bill Hinman and Ethereum. And I know that's a layer in the Ripple lawsuit, and has been brought up before the SEC enforcement director with members of Congress as well. What are your thoughts on that? Look, we know Bitcoin is not a security. That was, I think, Jay Clayton. He mentioned that, and Gary Gensler echoes those statements. However, all of a sudden, Ethereum was mentioned that it was not a security, and while the other tokens are in limbo. So, what do you think happened here with Bill Hinman and that whole debacle?
Boy, that is a tough one. I really don't know how that shakes out in terms of ethics. I think it's always tough when individuals work for the SEC. They can publicly make statements that they always say are only their own statements, that they don't speak for the. But those of us in the securities law area, of course we parse their words. What else do we have to go on when there isn't a regulation? We are constantly trying to figure out which way is the SEC going? How do we advise our clients? So it's a real problem. I think the whole meetings that happened and you know it, I really can't comment on the ethics though. I
Right.
don't know. I'm glad that, that it's being looked into, and hopefully we will get better answers from that inquiry.
For sure. What are your thoughts on people saying that the SEC, and I know you mentioned they go after kind of sometimes low-hanging fruit to set an example, but they went after Kim Kardashian, and folks are saying this seemed like a PR stunt because as soon as that news broke, Chairman Gensler is on TV, they're doing all this social media push, and it's like, come on, what is this? You have a job to do, protect investors, but why the PR stunt? Why the political moves and things like that?
Well, when you think about it, the SEC, remember back when they did their little game show with the meme stocks, and apparently that cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. I heard somebody say like $500,000 they spent on that. I mean, they are always trying to get the word out. In my humble opinion, that whole like game show thing was a waste of money and very disrespectful to investors in GameStop and AMC and other of those so-called meme stocks. But the SEC couldn't buy better public outreach than the Kim Kardashian case. I mean, we had Gary Gensler on one side of the screen,
Yeah.
and we had Kim Kardashian on the other. When was he ever going to be able to get that kind of exposure? Come on, that was awesome for him. So he likes to say, we've done this before. We went after Steven Seagal, and he did, and Floyd Mayweather, DJ Khaled, yes, they did. But Kim Kardashian, that's just amazing. So it was when Kim Kardashian did this, I commented on it. It was a dumb move. This is a woman who's in law school. She should have a better legal team,
Mm.
right? And this was just dumb, big mistake, violated, an SEC statute and a rule. Yep, and that's that. She was dead in the water. So it was, I'm sure it was not a high resource case. I think this
Sure.
was a
Yeah.
pretty much of a laydown. So they didn't waste a lot of time on it. But Gensler got a lot of play in the public eye, being able to get the point across. And so I don't really fault them for that. I do fault them for the game show.
Sure. And I think once again, it's all these things when you look at it holistically, you get a lay of the land because it's not that they find Kim Kardashian. That's fine. Whatever, right? DJ Khaled, if they violated the rules, they violated the rules. But why the PR stunt? And then folks are the juxtaposition of it is that, hey, were you not looking at Celsius Network or Terra Luna or Voyager? Like, what? I don't care about Kim Kardashian. I care about the millions that were lost via these platforms. Like, where
Yeah,
was the SEC?
right. And that's where the SEC says, well, we don't have enough resources. And so we can try. We can go after lots of different tokens that are out there, lots of different platforms, but we will never be able to go after everyone. And they're right about that. And
Sure.
so what they're trying to get out there is the message to investors. Investor education is a huge part of what the SEC does. And it's unfortunate that a lot of that education has to happen through enforcement actions because, people love hearing about the interesting facts. People don't like hearing about a new rule or regulation. That's super boring to anyone other than me. But when you want to get the word out there, you are trying to do it in every way possible. And it's not going to help the SEC if only people like me go onto their website and read about these things or know about the cases that they bring. So this was a big opportunity for them. And I know it's such a, cheesy sort of process. And yes, everybody wanted to talk to Gary Gensler because they got to put Gary on one side, Kim Kardashian on the other, she's awesome looking, yeah, of course. But that is how the SEC gets the message out there. And they didn't have to pay $500,000 for that. That was free, press that they got. So yes, I understand that folks are frustrated when they see how the SEC is deploying its resources. And part of the problem is that the SEC has non-public investigations. So a lot goes on that we don't know about.
Sure.
Even those of us in the industry, we don't know. Now, eventually we should know. I mean, either a case goes away, in which case we never know, or an investigation is resolved and there's no charges, in which case it just disappears. But the SEC's been taking a really, really long time to go after even the low-hanging fruit. And I think that's a little frustrating. I think, it sometimes has to do with deferring to state regulators or maybe other things intervene. But one of the things that is very frustrating lately is a loss of confidence in the SEC as the officer on the beat in the investment world. And I think it's important to get that back. Now, maybe that's just the cycle that we go through. Maybe it's our times that we have just a lot of loss of faith in government's ability to regulate the marketplace. But they need to do something to sort of get people, particularly in the crypto community, to have confidence in them as the beat cop.
Yeah, and I've also seen a lot of complaints from the stock side with AMC and all that. So to your point, there is a different dynamic now with social media and real-time information and being able to once again see the lay of the land. Before the internet, you weren't able to access FOIA requests and all these things so easily. So there's a lot of documentation. I can go pull up Chairman Gensler's calendar right now and look back years and all that. So there's a different dynamic, and I don't know how the SEC is going to fix this, but to your point, folks are not happy and losing confidence for sure.
And it's something that could be fixed if Congress sort of reached in and reorganized the SEC. Maybe, the CFTC has a lot of faults on its own. I mean, it's not perfect by any means. It's a much smaller agency and operates differently, in some ways from the SEC. But with respect to crypto, its leadership, when all this was happening in 2017, 2018, 2019, leadership at the CFTC was being responsive and was trying to figure out ways to engage with the crypto community. My sense, the SEC is just much more, CFTC is kind of the Johnny-come-latelys and, kind of not the cool kids, they're kind of the nerds doing this, like, ooh, all this futures and stuff. But that's not like Wall Street. Like Wall Street's the cool kids, and so they can, they have to do more to be relevant. The SEC is like, hey, you'll do things our way or the highway, we'll come crush you like bugs. So it's frustrating to have them just so entrenched in the way that they do things. I think Chairman Gensler has come up against that, I am sure. I mean, again, I have no personal knowledge of this, but trying to get a giant agency like the SEC to change is actually Arthur Levitt, a former chairman from eons ago, said it's like trying to turn an aircraft carrier.
Mm,
It doesn't happen fast.
sure.
It's a slow process. And I think Chairman Gensler has been fighting that. I think it's frustrating for everyone. I'm sure it's frustrating for him and the staff. I mean, imagine you are a staff person who has a certain area of expertise and you've been there for decades and you really know this area. And now that's just going to get wiped away. We're going to get rid of the regulations, right? For example, the way that we regulate short selling.
Mm,
That's the GameStop AMC complaints. Like, oh no, we'll sweep that away. Let's get rid of that. Let's say that, we're not going to have this whole system the way it operates. You're going to have to actually go out and find yourself a share, Okay. And then the share that you're borrowing gets marked. So nobody else can borrow it. It gets borrowed once. So we have a 1-to-1 between shares that are out there in the world and borrows. And that's it. You can't short more than 100%. We could have a rule like that.
sure.
But there's an entire industry out there that's built around the current system of how shorts work, of how that whole process of borrowing works. And that would just wipe them away.
Mm,
So those folks are going to be a little entrenched, right? And it's not just people at the SEC. It's
sure.
people at the exchanges. It's DTCC. It's entire large numbers of people in outside of government, just in the industry. So they're going to fight to keep things the way they are.
I want to ask you about Bitcoin ETF. So the SEC has not approved a Bitcoin spot ETF yet. They have approved a futures and a short futures ETF, I believe it's called. Grayscale, as a result, is suing the SEC. I had interviewed former SEC Commissioner Joseph Grunfest, and in my interview with him earlier this year, he said these applicants who get denied can sue the SEC. What are your thoughts on this whole situation? First, why has the SEC not approved a Bitcoin spot ETF? And what do you think about Grayscale's lawsuit?
Well, I can't keep up with a scholar like Grunfest. Oh no, but from my perspective, I understand the difference that the SEC is making, that how they're splitting hairs here and saying, well, we can do this, we can approve the futures based ETF, but not the spot ETF. And it is splitting hairs, but the reason is they get to insert some other regulatory agency and a the CME and the CFTC, they get to sort of be in there as the buffer
Hmm,
when you have futures as part of an ETF. And we're running into these kinds of problems a lot, with what about Wyoming crypto banks? Right? We have the same sort of problem where the Fed is saying, "Oh my God, we don't want to open the Fed borrowing window to crypto. If we open it to the first one, we're going to have to open it to all of them because what will happen? They'll get hit with a Grayscale kind of case, right?
mhm.
Why would you say yes to one in order to have it be a sandbox and see how it works, but then you have to say no to all the other ones that come up right afterwards?" This is the problem with the sandbox. This they might have let this futures ETF, it might have been in their minds like, well, let's just wait a little while and see how it goes. But then they get smacked with this Grayscale case. And, now do they have to open the doors? And their problem is, and I think it's a valid one, is they don't understand. And because we have Bitcoin is on a decentralized platform, we don't have a way to determine and to really validate all the transactions that happen on the platform. So one of the things that in the securities industry, you cannot, doing something called wash sales. is
Mm,
a market manipulation. It's
sure.
illegal,
Yeah.
right? You can't just take the securities from this pocket, sell them here, and then sell them right back
Right.
and have that be a valid transaction. That's called a wash sale.
Right.
Forbes did a study, a while back where they looked at actual transactions that happened in various on various platforms, and they questioned whether a number of them, huge percentage actually, were valid transactions. So
Mm,
you can't really tell, and that is a real problem for the SEC. I think when they get to sort of have things flow through the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, it's like, good, they can go deal with that problem. They can go figure it out. Now it's their problem. They'll figure it
mm,
out. And we can always, as an agency, we can say, well, we were relying on the CFTC and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange to police that. And if they didn't do their job, shame on them. But it doesn't, I mean, we have political operators here, political entities, and they have to protect their own turf. They don't want to lead with their chin. The Federal Reserve doesn't want to go out there and say, "Yeah, we'll open the Fed window." What the heck? Well, let's see what happens. They got to protect their institution and make sure that they're not just creating an open door for a lot of money just to go out the door.
well, it sounds like what you're saying, and I often talk about this. These government agencies are almost protecting the incumbents a bit, and it's like, well, we're not going to trust Grayscale, but we'll trust BlackRock. Is there a bit of that?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, there definitely is. When big Wall Street players started getting involved in Bitcoin and other crypto, it changed the dynamic with the SEC. And in part, that's because, I mean, I have to be honest, crypto folks did not get into crypto in order to learn about a whole bunch of securities regulations and comply with them. That wasn't the driving factor, right? I mean, it
Sure.
didn't come from Wall Street, it came from outside. And so there is a real sense of rebellion against the strictures of the SEC's regulatory world. Now, when you have people coming from Wall Street, BlackRock knows they've got more compliance people than you could shake a stick at. So
Mm.
they know what the rules are. They know they have systems set up to comply with the rules. The SEC regularly trots their examiners down there and observes what they do and likes the way they kind of keep their books. Like, oh yes, good. That's exactly the way we want to see, things. So to some extent, that is going to help the industry,
Mm.
because that's going to give the SEC more confidence that the people who are engaged in crypto transactions are actually following the rules. I'm not against, the big brokerage firms getting into crypto. I think it's good because those are people, those are entities that they have a system for supervising their people set up. They have a system for ensuring compliance. It's going to be hard, but they know what they're supposed to do. And it's a lot easier for them to bring in crypto than it is for the crypto world to suddenly become a broker dealer
Mm.
or become an investment advisor, to kind of
For sure.
adopt all that. Oh, now we got to have a custodian. I mean,
Mm.
just understanding custodians, people in
Right.
the crypto world, like, what the heck? Why do we have to worry about custodians? It's there, it's on the blockchain. It's like,
Mm.
no, you got to worry about custodians. Like, people in the securities world, they get that. They
Mm.
understand custodian is important.
Do you think Grayscale is going to win?
Yeah. It's a tough one. I don't think so, but boy, you're going to come back, 6 months from now, and I'm going to get whacked because they win. I mean, look, they've got a damn good argument. They
Sure.
do. But I do see that, just from an equitable standpoint, I don't think it's actually arbitrary and capricious, the line that the SEC drew. And I think the SEC may not have been as explicit about this and may have to be more explicit about relying on the CFTC and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I don't think they want to necessarily say that out loud, like, ooh, we're a little nervous about this. We don't really want to like stick our neck out and get whacked off, have our heads whacked off. So we're going to let the CFTC and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange like stick their necks out. And, they're less risk averse than we are. But I think that's going to have to come out a little bit more in their response to, an excellent brief that, I mean, I was just knocked out by reading, what Grayscale wrote. They brought in fabulous people and they wrote an incredible, complaint. And so if it can be won, they will win it. But I think if the SEC actually trots out the real practical reasons and doesn't just rely on sort of the not very good language that they've used so far. I think they've hidden behind kind of vague language about, preventing fraud and,
Yeah.
having a stable regulatory, stable system for monitoring. It's vague. I think they're going to need to get more specific. And that's going to be kind of interesting to read.
Lisa, really great information and insights. I got some wrap-up questions here for you.
Sure.
First, rapid fire, favorite food?
Oh, Chicago pan pizza, pepperoni. Yeah.
Favorite musician or band?
Oh, that's a tough one. Joni Mitchell. I play a lot of Joni Mitchell music. Love those alternate tunings.
Favorite movie?
Oh, lately? Well, it's got to be The Princess Bride.
My Amazon Alexa just went off. I forgot to mute
Hey,
it.
hello, Alexa.
It's
Hey,
playing some
love you.
Joni Mitchell song.
All right. See, she's a Joni Mitchell fan too.
Favorite book?
Favorite book. Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth.
And when you're not doing your lawyer duties and things like that, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
I love playing my electric guitar and electric bass with various friends in various bands. So I have
That's
a great
awesome.
time doing that. Little Joni Mitchell, little like PJ Harvey, Blondie, all kinds of great stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. And finally, if you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
All right. That would be it'd have to be like Lollapalooza. Just I want to be in a band, but I want to be in a band. I want to be playing in a band. That's it. That would be that's like my dream.
Very cool. Lisa, pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun.